Okay, so let's talk about identifying entrepreneurial opportunities. And if you'll recall from the first lecture, that the entrepreneurial opportunity is the innovative product or service with market potential. It has to create value, it has to be timely, and people have to want it. One of the probably most influential thinkers on the whole concept of entrepreneurship was an Austrian economist by the name of Joseph Schumpeter. And he had this concept called creative disruption or creative destruction. And basically, creative destruction was this idea that innovation really takes place when there are shifts that happen economically, culturally, in all kinds of different ways, technologically, where new opportunities are created and old structures are destroyed. An example for me that I think about in terms of my age and in my life is the evolution of the telephone to the smartphone. Back when I was a little kid, we had a telephone in our house. You twisted the numbers to dial it, or you punched the buttons. It was attached to the wall. And then it was, when cordless phones came about, everybody was like, ah. And through the process of creative destruction, I would be willing to bet that none of you probably have a phone in your house, because smartphones, once smartphone technology came out, once Apple came out with the iPhone, that created a cultural shift where people moved away from having the telephone that was stuck on the wall in their house. That's an example of the force of creative destruction. So through the process of destruction, something new and better is evolved. And Schumpeter basically said that there were 5 methods for creating new products. The first was creating a new market for an existing product. If you think about Ozempic was a product that was designed to help control diabetes. When all of a sudden people found out that it was also leading to significant weight loss in people who took Ozempic, then here comes the new market, and now everybody's taking the weight loss drugs. Lots of examples in the pharmaceutical industry of creating new products, new markets for existing products. Sometimes it's about a new supply of resources. When you think about the rare earth minerals that drive things like cell phones and cell phone technology, automotive technology, things like that, those technologies are driven because of those natural resources that can power them. Using existing technology in a new way. So when I think about using existing technology in a new way, I think about like satellite technology and how Starlink has utilized satellite technology to provide internet in places where where you used to not be able to get any. I kind of attribute van life and all of the van lifers that you see out there to that change in technology, where people now with Starlink can be connected to the internet from everywhere. And so that is an existing technology that's used in a new way. You could also argue that existing technology being used to create a new product, because the existing technology, satellite, was used in a new way to create Wi-Fi. There also, out of that, became a new product in all of the Starlink dishes, or the Starlink receivers, however you want to use that term. And then finally, the 5th method was a new technology creating a new product. An example of something like that might be a new type of material that's made, like maybe a new form of plastic, or, well, plastic is an example, right? Plastic was, I think, created in like the 1950s. And once that was discovered, once plastic was really discovered, it created opportunities for lots and lots of new products made from plastic. I'm looking around, well, I guess my chair is made out of plastic, but I'm not seeing very many other things in my immediate surroundings that are made out of plastic, which is probably a good thing. So that's Joseph Schumpeter and creative destruction, and how that process works to imbue innovation and entrepreneurship. Some additional drivers, so of entrepreneurial opportunity. So I just mentioned technology, but also globalization. As the world gets smaller, meaning that we are more able to connect with global partners and global peoples, that actually opens up new markets and new opportunities. When you view my business idea generator lectures, you'll see some of those opportunities that exist in global markets that can be brought into the local marketplace. New funding options and industry economics. When there's new ways to start businesses, so for example, Kickstarter and GoFundMe and Indiegogo, all of these ways for people to micro raise money has created opportunities for people to start businesses that traditional banks and traditional funders generally wouldn't fund. And then finally, industry economics. Certainly, economics is a driving force of much of business. And so by understanding how industry economies work, you can certainly find opportunities for new products, new services, and new ventures. So in terms of how you identify business opportunities, I have a separate lecture that addresses some business idea generation techniques. So I'm going to encourage you to view that and see the very specific techniques that I talk about because they work great. Inside-out analysis, looking and outside-in analysis, I'll talk about those in a minute. Looking at demand and also looking at supply. And so I'm going to talk first about inside-out analysis. And inside-out analysis is where you evaluate your own competencies and then look for new products or services that you can develop in order to offer to consumers. So let's say, for example, that, well, I make great salad dressings, if you didn't know that about me. I make great salad dressings, okay? And so because I'm really great at making salad dressing, maybe I can start a salad dressing company. Maybe I can start a YouTube channel focused on salad dressing. Maybe I can start a meal prep service focused on making salads. So there's lots and lots of opportunities related to what I do well with my own competencies and then what I can create out of that. Outside-in analysis is analysis where you first look at the market to see what's needed, and then you relate what's needed in the market to your own capabilities. So I see that in Oceanside, there is a need for mobile auto detail. And because there is a need for mobile auto detail, nobody's doing it, so I can start my mobile auto detailing business. So that would be an example of outside-in analysis. A demand-based opportunity is going to be an opportunity that originates from customer needs, desires, or unmet market demands. So again, something where you're in the market and you see that there is a need for something, and you have the knowledge, skills, and ability to provide that, and desire to provide that need. Supply-based opportunities stem from new methods, new processes, or new technologies. So something new and cool and unique is created, and you harness that because you have access to whatever this thing is, and you create an opportunity by virtue of your access or your knowledge or whatever it might be. You have something that you can supply, just like I have knowledge that I am now supplying to you. So how do you screen opportunities? There are lots of processes available to you to evaluate ideas. You want to evaluate for financial viability, for market demand, and for available resources. Typically, you do what's called a feasibility analysis. I'm going to talk about that in a few slides, but there's definitely lots of ways to identify if an idea can be a great opportunity. Now, generally, you want to use primary and secondary research. Primary research is research that you conduct yourself. So maybe that's interviewing somebody or creating a survey. And then secondary resources are research using existing sources. Google, the library resources at MiraCosta College, US Census data, things like that. So with feasibility, sorry, I have like a hair that's stuck to my face somewhere, and I don't want to edit this video when I'm done, so I'm probably just going to start picking it myself. Feasibility criteria. So when you're looking at feasibility, first of all, you're going to look at, is there a target market that's going to be willing to buy this product or service? Is there demand? I love making salad dressing. Are there people out there that want to use my salad dressing? Good question. If there's not a market, there's no product or service. The market structure and size. So how difficult is it going to be for you to bring your product to the market? Is there enough demand to make the concept scalable? Can you take it from one person to 50 people? Is there that opportunity there? If there's no opportunity for scale, you're going to have a hard time getting the business to grow. Margins and resources. Are your costs manageable? Can you make a profit? Do you know what you have to put into your product financially in order for it to sell? And does it make sense? Some additional questions that you're going to want to ask yourself. Are people going to value the product or service? Does it solve a significant problem? It doesn't have to solve a problem, but problem-solving products and services do much better than things that people are just going to buy just because they like them. Is the market for the product definable and specific? Does the market have unique needs or expectations that align with your entrepreneurial opportunity? What about timing? Is the timing right? A lot of great ideas are just timed incorrectly. Are there infrastructure or supporting resources that need to be commercialized or created prior to launching your venture? So do you have, you might have the great idea, but is there everything there that's going to help you to build it, both physically and conceptually? What are the resources that you need to start your venture? What is your competitive advantage? We'll talk about competitive advantage in a minute. That you offer within the industry, and is it a sustainable competitive advantage? Is it something that you can repeat? What is the timeline between starting your venture and your first sale? And then how long before the venture becomes profitable, and do you have the resources to support this timeline? Remember, I talked about the runway. How big is your cash runway? Because you're going to need time between startup and true profitability. So another thing that you're probably going to want to do is you're going to need to analyze the market. Direct competitors are competitors that compete with you directly. McDonald's and Burger King are direct competitors. Indirect competitors are competitors that don't compete with you directly, but there is still competition in the market based on whatever that product or service is. So for example, when you think about pizza, Domino's and Little Caesars, direct competitors. Indirect competitors might be the frozen pizza that you can buy at the grocery store. Still a pizza and still competing, but just not head to head. Is competition good or bad? Sometimes competition is a really good thing. Competition is either zero-sum or it's not zero-sum. Zero-sum competition means that when there has to be a winner and a loser. Meaning, if I'm trying to think of an example here. Meaning, let's say, I'm gonna say like a bank, okay? When I put my money into US Bank, it means that Bank of America is not getting my money because I'm starting an account at US Bank. So it makes sense for a bank to be located and placed somewhere by itself so that there isn't two banks across the street from one another. When you think about restaurants, let's think about restaurants. When you're hungry for something and you don't know quite what you want, Would you rather go somewhere where there's only one restaurant by itself? Or would you rather go, like, say, to downtown Oceanside, where you might have 15 or 20 choices? Or a restaurant row where you have 5 or 10 choices, or a food court. And so sometimes competition and being around your competitors is actually a good thing. SWOT analysis. So when we're looking at our competencies and we're looking at what we do well and what we need to work on as businesses, we use a tool called SWOT. And I'm going to say that SWOT is probably one of the most consistently valuable tools that I have used throughout my career. I have another video on SWOT, so I'm just going to go over it really quickly here. SWOT stands for Strengths, Weaknesses, Opportunities, and Threats. Strengths and weaknesses are internal to you. You can control them, okay? Opportunities and threats are external, meaning you cannot control them. So a threat, a competition is always going to be a threat because you can't control what your competitors are doing. Your customer service policies are either going to be a strength if they're great or a weakness if they're not great, meaning that you can change your policies and do better. Okay. And then threats are, well, I talked about threats, like, things that you just have to be aware of and plan for. And then opportunities are external to you. So factors out there, things out there in the marketplace that you might be able to harness. So for example, there might be an opportunity for you to sell online. That would be an opportunity because of the internet. Okay. So opportunities, tariffs. A tariff is either it's probably always going to be a threat. In some instance, it might be an opportunity. I cannot think of that instance right now, but things like that. Tax rates is going to be opportunities or threats. So regulatory things, lots of stuff. But anyways, I will get you a separate video on SWOT because, like I said, it's a great tool and it's something that every business person should know how to use. The 3 circles tool helps you to identify a unique selling position and create your competitive advantage. Oh, that was a weird bump. And so with the 3 circles tool, you have your company, which is what you offer. You look at your customers or your potential customers and identify what their unmet needs are. And then you have your competitors, meaning what your competitors are offering. They're ideally somewhere in the 3 circles, you want to be able to identify points of parity where you and your competitors might offer something equally valuable that's going to meet your customer's unmet need. So you and your competitor might be offering the same thing, and your job is to identify what that market advantage is going to be, what's going to be a little bit different for you that's going to push the customer into your shopping cart, for lack of a better word, versus theirs. And so it kind of forces you to think about what is the really cool thing that you're going to offer that your competitor cannot. Like I said, so for me and my little Airbnb here, what I can offer is a beautiful ocean view right behind me, actually across the street, and a really comfortable space at a really good price point. An Airbnb 2 streets away is not going to be able to offer the view. I don't know about their price points. I care about what I do. My husband and I also, another one of our income streams is content marketing. We do content marketing for folks. And one of our competitive advantage is the fact that he's handy. So I can have him create a marketing video for somebody that's about how to fix something, how to install something, how to put something together. So that is a unique advantage that we have by virtue of his particular skill set. Your unique selling proposition describes why your product, or any product, is better or different than the competitors. You always want to be able to identify your USP. It describes the product or service rather than the business. So like I said, My unique selling position is really about my location. If the unique selling position of maybe a Mexican restaurant might be in the way that they craft their food. Maybe there's a special dish, maybe that only they do. If you're familiar with Primo Market, their green salsa, the Serrano salsa, to me, that is like one of their major USPs. It's delicious. It's really spicy. Go try it if you like spicy food and you haven't had it. And also, it's like you used to get a giant 16-ounce container of it for $4.99. Now you get a 8-ounce container. No, 8 ounces for $4.99. Now you get like 4 ounces for $8.99. They know that they're onto something with it. Your competitive advantage is not about a product, it's about your business. And the competitive advantage is the edge that you have over your competitors. It's usually based around cost, so lower cost, higher cost, generally lower cost, or differentiation. Differentiation is how you are different. And ideally, your competitive advantage is replicable, meaning that it is something where it can be repeated time and time again. So Costco's competitive advantage is related to their price, their service, and their return policies. In-N-Out's competitive advantage is related to their ingredients. Ideally, you can identify the competitive advantage generally. So Walmart's competitive advantage is going to be cost. They differentiate based on cost. Most businesses that differentiate, they differentiate based on service, what it is that you're providing. So your customer value proposition is not your competitive advantage. CVP is a concise statement that communicates the unique benefits of your product or service to its target audience, highlights the problem it solves, the advantages, and it provides why the customer should choose you rather than your competitors. So that's the customer value proposition, your CVP. Your CA is competitive advantage. So let's talk for a minute about why businesses fail. Well, this is going to be more than a minute. So businesses fail for a lot of reasons. And I wanted to include this information because people tend to be overly optimistic when they start. And you need to think in terms, you need to tend to be a realist because your investors are going to be realists. Entrepreneurs typically are optimists. One of the biggest reasons is you just don't sell enough. And you may not sell enough because maybe your product wasn't as great as you thought it was going to be, or maybe your service is awful. There's a lot of reasons for low sales. Sometimes it's your location, which is always which is down there on the list. But yeah, that's also a really big bummer when it's your location. Lack of experience. Running a business is difficult, and a lot of people who open businesses are technicians rather than business folks. So a carpenter, for example, is going to be really good at doing carpenter stuff and may not be great at doing business stuff like accounting and finance and talking to banks and talking to potential customers. And so knowing that you have the experience to do all of the other things besides the technician piece is really important. Insufficient capital. A lot of people start businesses without having enough money to start. So they think that they're only going to need $50,000 when in reality they probably needed $100,000. That's why I'm always going to tell you to start on a shoestring and don't quit your day job until you know that you can make this business go and make it go in a way that it will sustain you. Poor location, I already talked about that. Sometimes your location is critical. If you're a coffee shop, you need to have a great location. If you are a gymnastics, if you offer gymnastics lessons, location isn't as important because people will be willing to drive out of their way to take their kids to gymnastics lessons. They're not going to want to go out of their way to go get a cup of coffee. Just kind of difference in the product or services. Inventory management. Sometimes people have either too much inventory, and so they don't have, turning inventory into cash is what you want to do, but you don't want to have so much excess inventory that you can't sell it in time to pay your bills. Overinvestment in fixed assets. Your fixed assets are your equipment, your cars, all of the things that you need to lease or purchase in order to run your business. And if I have $50,000 to start a business and I spend 40 of it on a Toyota Prius that is not really going to be crucial to my business, then I've got money in an asset that really isn't working for my business, and it should be. Poor credit arrangement management. Basically what that means is hopefully you will be in a position where you don't have to, where you either have cash and can use cash, or people will do business with you on credit, meaning that your supplier will sell you your supplies and then bill you in 30 days. One of the great things about Costco is that when you go to Costco and you see a whole bunch of TVs, right? Costco doesn't go buy those TVs and then resell them. Costco calls up Samsung or whoever it is whose TVs they have, and they say, hey, Samsung, this is Costco, and we want to buy 1,000 TVs, but we're not going to pay you for a month. We're going to pay you in 30 days. And Samsung says, well, sure, Costco, we'd love to sell you 1,000 TVs. That's no problem. Here are your TVs. And then in 30 days, they send a bill. What's Costco doing between day 1 and day 30? They're going to sell 1,000 TVs. So when the time comes that the bill is due, Costco has just made their profit without having to outlay any cash for the TVs. Genius. Anytime that you can use credit in that way, it's good for your business. Another reason why businesses fail is people take too much out of the business in paying themselves. You want to, as a business owner, pay yourself minimally until the business does well. I pull very little money out of my Airbnb business. I only pull out when there is a specific bill related to it to pay, or I'm paying expenses for the business. Otherwise, I keep the money in the business. And that's just, it's because I want it. It is a lifestyle business, but I still want it to grow a little bit. Unexpected growth. Sometimes something gets so popular that you can't handle all of the growth that wants to come your way. And so the business fails because of its popularity. I'm trying to think of a product or service that has done that. And the only thing that I can think of right now is Crocs in the early 2000s. But yeah, well, I'll give you Crocs in the early 2000s. So the Crocs that you see around now, it's the same Crocs, but they almost went out of business in about 2010, somewhere around there. And the reason for that was that Crocs got very popular very quickly. And so everybody wanted a different color pair of Crocs. And they wanted, I wanted 7 pairs so that I could have, and I'm not a Croc girl, by the way, but maybe I wanted yellow on Monday, orange on Tuesday, red on Wednesday. And so people were just like buying Crocs and buying Crocs and buying Crocs. And Crocs saw that that their product was so popular that they started making way too many. And once they started making way too many, and sales started to slow down because they will slow down naturally, all of a sudden, Crocs had way too much inventory on their hands because they had been so popular right when they broke into the market. And so then you started to see Crocs at like Ross and TJ Maxx and Marshalls because Crocs all of a sudden had to get rid of all of this excess inventory, and it almost killed them. And then finally, competition. Some people underestimate the competition. Some people overestimate the competition. Some people think that it's not zero sum when it is zero sum. And so understanding who your competitors are, how they compete with you, and how you can differentiate is always going to be of utmost importance as an entrepreneur. And like I said, we only learn from failure. When you fail, because you will at something, you need to understand why. Maybe it's your location. Maybe it's the way that you're trying to sell. Maybe it's that you're selling to the wrong customer. Maybe there's an issue with the product. Understanding why you're failing as quickly as possible will enable you to make course corrections earlier on. And so you really do need to know why it is that you failed, how you failed, and then you need to figure out what you can learn from it. I didn't really have any concluding thoughts for this lecture. So yeah, there's really nothing bright that I can say other than, like I said, when you're thinking about what product or service that you're going to provide, and you go through the ideation process, I think it's first of all really important to listen to that ideation process. Second of all, I think it's also important to vet your product or service or your business using something like SWOT, and not only understand what it is in the SWOT analysis, but understand how you can capitalize on those things that you're good at and minimize those things that you're not good at, or get training for them, or just be aware of how to function with maybe them there and you doing business harder, smarter, and working around that. So that's my concluding thoughts.